So I'm pretty sure we've all seen a horror movie. Maybe you've seen the recent box office hit It, or maybe an older movie like Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Do you sometimes wonder, what makes them so scary? To you at least. Do you want to find out how you can try to scare your audience in your movie? In today's video, I'll try to explain all that. So what is horror? Horror is a subgenre of fiction that was made to frighten the reader or watcher. What I like about horror is that creators can find so many ways to scare the audience, from jump scares to subtle things that can screw with your head. Let's discuss some elements that creators usually use to get that nice fear factor in their movies. But first, talk about the jump scare, a classic technique that most people like to use in their movies. Jump scares are a good way to scare the audience, that is, if used correctly. Jump scares can be anything from abrupt music scores, monsters coming out of nowhere surprising the audience, or even both. You can make a good jump scare by creating a good build-up, causing the audience to stay on the edge of their seats caught up in the suspense of a movie. I find creators don't usually use build-up in the movie, and instead, throw in a bunch of small jump scares in the way, and all leading up to one huge big one. This is not a good way to scare the audience, because sometimes they won't even be scared. If a bunch of jump scares are being thrown at you at once, then you will most likely be expecting the next one. Unless you're a jumpy coward like me and often don't go to see movies in theaters because I feel like I'll embarrass myself with my feminine screams. So what to take from this? If you're planning to use a jump scare in your film, then have a good build-up to it, instead of throwing small ones and having them everywhere in your movie. Now, we'll move on to my favorite kind of horror, psychological horror. Psychological horror relies on mental and emotional states in ways that unsettles or frightens the audience. This kind of horror is a very hard genre to accomplish, since it requires you knowing what your target demographic is afraid of. One of my favorite psychological horror movies is The Shining. This masterpiece of a movie achieves so many things that scares me and many others. Jack Torrance, one of the main characters of the film, slowly becomes insane as he takes care of the Overlook Hotel. What makes it so scary is that it triggers a fear of becoming as insane as he is. I mean, of course you don't want to become some crazy person going around a hotel with an axe about to murder their own wife and son. It's a good psychological horror film because it just doesn't rely on jump scares to scare you. It messes with your head with the strange architecture of the hotel, Danny's imaginary friend possessing him and trying to kill his own mother, and the list goes on and on. A good technique to make a good psychological horror film is looking at the most common fears. If you want to have animals to be the main fear, look at arachnophobia and ophidiophobia, fear of spiders and snakes. These two critters are commonly feared by a lot of people. Claustrophobia, xenophobia, and nyctophobia, the fear of small spaces, the unknown, and the dark, are good aspects to use when making psychological horror as well. Having your monster not seen throughout the movie can cause xenophobia and can make the audience intrigued yet terrified at the same time. Trypophobia, trypanophobia, and hemophobia, fear of holes, needles, and blood, can be a good use if you want body horror in your film. You can have an actor covered in holes, impaled by dozens of needles, or have them bleeding constantly to have that nice unsettled feel in your movie. Though this is a good way to subtly scare the audience, don't overuse it. Overusing it in your movie will most likely make your movie more disgusting than scary, like the Saw films. What to take from this? If you want to make a good psychological horror film, know what makes your target audience scared, and not try to overdo it. Sometimes the most subtle things can make the best scares. To conclude, many things can make us scared, and having those things in movies can make us scared of them. Though, if you don't use tactics like the ones I've explained correctly, you can easily make your film a cheesy one, like Killer Clowns from Outer Space, or that one movie that everyone likes to make fun of and make memes of. Anyway, hope you liked my video. Thank you for watching, and sweet nightmares.